into the second part of the database management webinar. We are looking at what you need to know about database management. So we've covered off the importance. We're now going into the legal obligations. Adherence to these can result in enormous fines. And it doesn't matter if you are a small or a large business, everyone is regulated by these same principles. So what are these principles? The first one is the collection of data, how you actually collect the data, what data you are collecting and how you're using it. The second is the use and disclose of the data. So what you are going to use it for and how and if you are going to disclose it to anyone else. The third is the data quality. So making sure, and you actually do have a requirement to make sure that this data is actually accurate and relevant. The fourth is about data security and making sure that you know that there are proper processes in place to make sure that all patient and potential patient data is secure. Fifth is about openness, and openness is you letting the people know how and what and where and why you are collecting this data. The access and corrections. So again, this is about making sure that the patients can access their information if they want. This is why the paper-based system is potentially not the best system to use, because then they will have access to absolutely everything. At least if it is an electronic file, you can select and show them exactly what data you do have on them. Identifiers, and this is making sure that every single person in your database does have a unique identifier. It is making sure that your data, or there is some level of secrecy around the data, and if people don't want to provide you with their data, they can actually remain anonymous. Ninth is about transborder data flows, and this is really talking to the international transfer of data. So what are the best practices and what are you and aren't you allowed to do with that data transferring internationally? And then the last thing is sensitive information, and this is particularly relevant within the healthcare industry, and how that information is actually captured and transferred to. So they are the 10 national privacy principles. And what we're going to do is we're going to go very quickly. I'm not going to read word for word because there is an attachment to this webinar, but just go through and give you a quick summary about what each of the national privacy principles is all about. So as you can see, there are a lot of words on the slide, but this first national privacy principle talks about the collection of data. And it is making sure that the data that you are collecting is actually fair and reasonable. So making sure that you're not collecting something that isn't relevant for your own use. The second is about the use and disclosure, and this one is probably one of the biggest principles, and it does talk to how you use the information and what is the primary purpose of the use, and making sure that you only do collect that data around that primary purpose. If the information is health information and the use or disclosure is necessary for research or the compilation or analysis of statistics relevant to the public health or public safety. In the case of disclosure, the organisation reasonably believes that the recipient of the health information will not disclose the health information or personal information derived from the health information. So this basically means that you're not going to share the patient's information with anyone else unless the patient does specifically ask for it. The other thing that is relevant specifically for health is here. If the information is genetic information and the organisation has obtained the genetic information in the course of providing a health service to the individual. So basically that's saying that any information that you capture about the patient during their sessions does need to be kept confidential and does need to be kept close to you. As I said, number 2 does continue to go on, so please make sure that you do read this in your own time. But it is just, as I said before, it's about making sure that you are using the information right and that you are only capturing that information that you do use. But in summary for this one, it is specifically talking about how you use a patient's information and where and how and who you can actually disclose this information to. Okay, the third one is about data quality, and this basically means that the organisations make a reasonable attempt to keep that data quality fresh and make sure that it is actually accurate. The fourth one is about data security and making sure that once the data is collected, that it is kept in a secure location, that it is either password protected or that it is behind closed doors and that no one can readily access it. The fifth is about openness and making sure that there is transparency and a rigid process for how, what, and where and why the data will be used for. Sixth is access and correction. So this means that the individual will be able to access the information and any data that is kept on them at any point in time that they request it. Number 7 is about identifiers, and this means that every single record that you do have on file has its own unique identifier. So as I was saying before, is for those people who like to add a new data or a new entry into the database for the same customer rather than updating an existing file, it means that one individual patient may have 2, 3, 4, 5 different unique identifiers. So they won't be able to come in and find all of their information about them personally because it'll be split over 3, 4, 5 different records. Number 8, and this one I can never say, anonymity. Basically, it means making sure that that people can be anonymous if they choose to be anonymous. So if they don't want to if they don't want to share their information, they do have the rights to make sure that they are anonymous. So number 9, the second last one, the trans-border data flows. So this really talks about the international transfer of data and what the rules and regulations are around that. So it basically says that the person does need to give permission before the data can be transferred, and you can't, without that permission, transfer that data to someone outside of the Australian area. Last one, number 10, sensitive information. So this one looks at the sensitive information that you are collecting and the rules and the regulations around that. So it looks at making sure that the individual has actually consented to giving you this information and for you to have it on record. And this is applicable to the health industry because most of the information that is collected is sensitive information, particularly when it is regarding someone's weight. So there are a couple of slides for this one, and then there are a couple of areas that are specifically relevant to the health industry. The 10 national privacy principles, again, they were the collection of data, the use and disclosure of the data quality, the data security, the openness, the access and corrections, the identifiers, making sure that you are anonymous. Number 9 is the transfer of the data. And then the last one is sensitive information and that collection of that sensitive information. If you do want more information about the national privacy principles, you can contact the Privacy Commissioner in New South Wales, and all of his details or all of their details are here, and they're also around the webinar as well.